conduct this evening. This project actually began in the spring of 2020, right on the onset of COVID. Probably one of the first virtual hearings, maybe back then, that came before this body for approval at the intersection of Aero Safety Road and Route 113. And the purpose of the store, and just to reiterate what we talked about a couple of years ago, was that the store at 113 and 18404 is going to be removed when DelDOT comes in to do the interchange project at that intersection. So that store will be demolished. So Royal Farms invested in this property a few years ago with the intent of this being the store location to replace that location that is going to be going away. And that's the purpose of the project. The store is a prototypical Royal Farms convenience with gas. You see the store up the road. It'll look very similar to that, although I will say the car wash, they've made some significant improvements in the architecture of those. They look much nicer, actually be more like the one in Millsboro, if you've seen that one, versus the one that's up the road here. You can thank Millsboro for that. They were very influential in making sure the architecture for the car wash looked a little nicer. And so we'll have a much nicer looking building here.
Excuse me, can I make you a suggestion to move the drawing up here, because this thing is kind of blocked with this thing? Yeah. If you put it right behind that chair, or maybe remove that chair and just put it right there. Yeah, right there. That's perfect. Is that good? Yep, wonderful. All right. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Now I can't see it.
Yeah, make it so you can see it. Yeah.
I should know it like the back of my hand, but I'm not that good. So the store is a typical Royal Farm store with the fuel pumps in the front, car wash. I believe it always had a car wash. The slight difference is we did add the diesel fueling here which wasn't there 2 years ago. The reason for that is that the DelDOT project that is happening here, which is part of the reason we need the extension of the approval, is we have been working with DelDOT for the last couple of years, frankly, on their project. As you know, they are making a significant improvement to Aero Safety Road and 113. In fact, if you see, some of the utility relocations have already started out there, and we've had to coordinate our project with their project. And in fact, DelDOT's actually building the entrances to this project. We had to enter into an agreement with them to fund it. We're funding it, of course, but DelDOT is actually building it, and that is because just the coordination of the construction effort for this project, rather than DelDOT building their project and then we come in, tear up what they did and add to it, or vice versa. Because of the alignment of the schedules, it made a lot more sense for one contractor to do it all at one time and get it done so that the end product is a good product. Because of that, we had to work with DelDOT very closely, their engineers who were engineering the improvement, which consists of widening Aero Safety Road, adding turn lanes. It also consists of a very long right turn lane that they're adding from 113 onto Aero Safety Road, and eventually this becomes a truck route bypass for the area. That's the intent of DelDOT's project. We had to work with their legal team to put together an agreement that has taken a very, very long time to do. However, I'm happy to report that that process has completed and the agreement is now being executed, for signatures. And that's part of the reason that, this project hasn't advanced as quickly as obviously we would like it to. During that time, we have worked with the town of Georgetown's planning department and engineering department. We actually just submitted our final plans to engineering, and we've obtained our fire marshal approval. And we've been through a number of rounds of review from Conservation District, and we're actually getting ready to submit the final signed and sealed plans to them as well. So we're right on the 5-yard line, I would say, for the project. We certainly haven't been, sitting on our hands. We've had some unique challenges to deal with here, given the integration of DelDOT's project, and that certainly has impacted our schedule. But the entrances that you see there have, by virtue of the agreement with DelDOT, have been blessed, as pretty sure DelDOT wouldn't build our entrances if they didn't like where they were or what they looked like. It's a right in, right out on 113 and the full access on Aero Safety Road, pushed back a good distance from the intersection. So with that, it's a pretty straightforward project. Meets all of the town's code requirements. And we're just looking for your approval of our extension of our approval this evening. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What were the changes made from the last one to this one? I wasn't aware of, wasn't in the.
Yeah, very minor. The store is the same. The fuel canopy in the front, the single canopy, the single loaded canopy is the same. The car wash was on the right side, and there was no diesel. We moved the car wash to the other side and added the diesel. The diesel was important because of the truck route. It's a truck route, so it makes sense to have the opportunity for diesel fueling there, and that's why that was added.
No, sir. Just stop. This is way out there. You got any electric charging stations?
Electric charging stations, they have done them.
Just curious. I mean,
They have done them. I don't know is the answer, frankly. A lot of times we don't necessarily show them on the plan. That's something they may add later, but they have added them at various locations throughout the state. I'm not sure if this location has a plan.
and then you brought the landscape plan also?
There is a landscape plan in our package, I believe.
Two boards. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I should show. This is just the
that's
graphic. You guys have all seen that. Just to show, and then the car wash facility there actually mimics more of the. Sure, talking to Mike. Mimics more of the architecture of the building as opposed to the greenhouse version of the road. So I brought those so that you could see what that looked like. If you hadn't been to Millsboro to see that one.
Right. I don't have a problem with the site at all, my own self. Although I know that you're going to have a lot of dirt that you have to transport off based on the ponds and all that good stuff. I think that the landscape that you have going along 113, on the one plan it shows like a 10-foot landscape planning area. I think that would be really nice if it was a berm aspect, and I'm not calling it as a requirement. I just think it's something that to throw back in the mind because you're going to have to lose some dirt somewhere. And this way, if you look at it, I think it's going to be a good thing for you. Plus, it also provides a safety for if someone coming down 113 it gets crazy, whatever, at least it provides a little bit of a berm that people would have to go over before they get into the parking area
Right.
due to an accident. It doesn't have to be huge, but if you just bring up like a 2-foot berm, you're going to slow down a lot of vehicles in that aspect. And it helps you lose dirt. But other than that, that's the only thing I've got.
The only thing I will add to that particular topic is what is not shown on this plan, but is part of DelDOT's plan, is a multi-use path. Actually, it is shown. I'm sorry. It is on the landscape plan. There's a 10-foot wide multi-use path that sits inside the right-of-way between our property line, our right-of-way line, and an easement that DelDOT requires. Then there's the landscaping, and then there's the parking. So it's a little bit tough for the berm just because there's the shared use path there. But I don't believe DelDOT would let us berm inside their right-of-way.
Right, now I was
Yeah.
thinking between the multimodal and the parking spot, you got a 10-foot planning area?
You're talking between the path and the curb. I see what you mean.
Yep, yeah, it's 10-foot planning area, because that's where your landscape's going.
Okay.
And that berm just kind of, if it's a multimodal path there, it keeps
I see what you
pedestrians
mean.
kind of going in one direction, not going up over. The other way, it's also just a barrier for errant vehicles.
Understood. Okay, I see.
And you're gonna have to lose dirt anyhow, so it makes it easy if you can lose it right on the site.
Sure. Yeah. Always a little more economical. Sure.
Any comments, any other comments, any questions,
No, sir.
anything in writing, anything from community coming in? Ms. Jocelyn?
I
Nothing?
would just make sure that you, when you make the motion, you include the agency approvals and the response to the engineer's comments.
I'm not making a motion, so
Well,
speak up, silly.
Please make sure you
Do
do
we
that.
have a motion on this?
Make a motion that approve the application for an extension of the preliminary site plan approval contingent upon the following state agency approvals and satisfaction of town engineer's comment.
Second.
It's been regularly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Yes.
All opposed? So carried. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep. Do we have anything else, Ms. Jocelyn?
You can ask if there's any public comment,
Is there any public comment?
and it could be on Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you determine that?
If anyone on Zoom.
Anybody on Zoom?
Comment, please raise your hand.
Oh, please raise your hand. See, that was buried.
I don't know if anybody's out.
I can go for it.
Yeah, I doubt it. Okay, hearing nothing, not seeing any hands raised. Planning Department report?
Okay, I can tell you that we received a submittal for what's called the Georgetown SW, short for Sherwin-Williams Warehouse. They officially submitted their plan and we've received comments, so we will be getting them out to the applicant, so that's moving forward. We also received final submittal on Admiral's Landing, which is the townhouses over behind Deltec. So they are moving forward now. They evidently were held up due to DelDOT for about 6 months. So that's moving forward. The two projects that we had in front of us and addressing their zoning amendment, when it went to town council, and that was on the ponds and, where's the second one? Georgetown Village. They were asking for the rezoning of those properties. Those have been tabled temporarily. Town council has asked for additional traffic impact information. So we're waiting for that to be presented to town council, and then they'll make those decisions on that. So just an FYI on that. And we are meeting with potential developer for 706 East Market Street, which was the Jones Greenlee property. That was individual building lots. We do have a meeting with them tomorrow to talk about their property and some ideas they have. So we'll see how that goes. And then we have another meeting. We actually had one today that we had with the Oaks and looking at their prospective application. They are making some additional changes. They are increasing the single-family portion of it, decreasing the townhome portion of it. And they are also changing the arrangement just a little bit, and they are adding an amenity of a clubhouse and pool for that side of the development, which is good. So we'll let you know as soon as that gets submitted, but we have not actually received it yet. So they're making some tweaks, and that'll be coming in soon, I have a feeling. So there's a lot going on out there, a lot of people asking a lot of questions. So we should see some major things submitted in the next month or two.
See, Dairy Queen started.
Yes.
Where's that gonna be?
Georgetown Plaza,
If you can hear me, I'm
Everybody was so excited
next to
about it.
KFC.
Oh, really?
They got a variance on that property 5 years ago.
get these people involved.
They had to
What do
get
you
it
like,
renewed.
Eric? Chili dogs? Blizzards?
Okay,
A vanilla.
after we finish, if you push back a bit so I can speak to everybody. There was a last time in a city council meeting, we
Okay.
had a conversation about, and meet and greet also, there was a lot of conversation about how we can simplify our planning process so it's not difficult for individuals to come out and build in this town, because the thing is that Georgetown is difficult for growth. So that was one of the points was brought up in meet and greet when the mayor's election thing in the city council,
Okay.
county council thing. So the last city council, we discussed that point also. And Linda was there and we talked about it, and we thought that we should look into a out-of-the-box solution. One of the things which was brought up is the engineering, going back and forth to the engineer, and it takes too much money, it takes too much time, and why can't we just have it once or twice and have a conference call and get it over with it? My suggestion was, I'm an engineer, so I feel that why don't we hire an engineer? How much money do we spend on an engineer in a year with all these 300?
Zero.
Right
Yeah, but I
now,
mean-
we don't, right now,
No,
the
we
town
don't
does
spend
not spend
the money
any.
which the people who are coming in, they are spending the money.
So if I was the town's engineer reviewing the plans,
Right,
And I said, okay, these are the corrections you need to make.
right.
And you don't make those corrections, and you submit plans back to me again, and I see the same corrections that still need to be made, and I send it back to you. How many times are you gonna correct them?
No, but I'm just saying, can't we figure out a way that the town engineer work with the developer and say, hey, these are the things have to be corrected before we even look it back at it? If it's not corrected, don't bring it back.
Well, that should be in the
I
report
mean,
letter, shouldn't
we
it?
do it. The report is sent out, and then many developers and engineers for those developers come back, and we actually have phone calls and conference calls and discuss the comments, if there's any questions on what the comments have been. We also experience a lot of situations where the engineers don't correct the issues for some reason, and we have to resend it out again.
I understand, but what is the solution to simplify this and make it a faster process? What can be done? I know what the problems are. I'm trying to figure out how can we come up with a solution that, hey, this is the list. If this checklist is not met, don't bring it back to me. You have this checklist, engineering comments is one of those things. If all the engineering comments are not completed, you don't come back. But in between, we should be able to reach out in about a month if we haven't heard from them. Hey, what happened?
Well,
You were
part
supposed
of-
to bring
okay.
it back to us. What happened to you?
Go ahead.
Council, go ahead.
Just my experience is, I mean, the thing is, the engineers for the town, it takes a little time to review it, but I know Jocelyn does pre-application meetings. And I know, even in my practice, not necessarily engineering, but as far as applications and things like that with the county, I usually go over and talk to the powers that be for 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and just say, this is what I'm gonna submit. So I don't know if the engineers, if we encourage developers to meet with the engineers before they submit. In other words, this is what I'm proposing. You know, they haven't spent all the money yet, but the engineer for us knows the checklist, so you don't have as much back and forth. But I don't know if they do that now anyway.
I don't think so. That process usually starts after we start applying and then the engineer, this is what I heard. I could be wrong totally. It seems like that the engineering piece is the one which is taking more, that's what I understood, that it takes more time of going back and forth with and how can we simplify it? So my question was that if we are charging the client to pay the engineer's cost, do we have any idea how much in a year are we charging these clients?
Oh, I'm sure we
50,000,
can pull
100,000?
it. We can pull it because it's a customer account that's billed when we receive the bills from the engineer. We then bill that money to that customer.
It would be interesting to know if we are billing about $100,000, $200,000, you can hire an engineer in-house and hopefully that will speed up the process and that guy can do other stuff too when he's not reviewing the plan.
Well, and that's part of the issue because you're gonna have a flux. You're gonna have times when you're totally jammed and one person couldn't handle it, and then you're
Right.
also gonna have times when there's not enough to keep them busy 20,
Right.
you know.
Do you guys collect with your application fee, do you collect an escrow that goes over
We
here
do
for
not do it in
engineer?
escrow right now.
Okay, so what we do, and this, I'm not saying this is gonna work, but it still falls back. We have an application fee, you pay that. You got a site plan, we have a fee schedule, it's gonna cost you 10 grand for that escrow account, put it in, that pays the engineer fee. Right? Possibly. Engineer looks at it, does all of his reports, we pay the engineer out of that 10 grand. Once it gets down to a certain fee, we come back to the developer and say, you owe us more money. Well, how come? Well, our engineer, the towns that we hire, same way this Georgetown does, had to review your plans or your engineer's plans 4 times because he didn't correct 5 things. That's why you owe us more money. Well,
That's a start, that's a good
that,
start.
but it's the same thing as if the developer's engineer gets into the town code and says,
They don't.
I've done, but that's the problem right there. So it's the developer's engineer's problem that they're not.
Responsibility, yes, I agree with you 100%.
So
But
we
I'm just
can't
saying
go and
that's
say-
what is not happening, but we getting the bad name because the Georgetown is not growth friendly.
Well, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on planning and zoning, because I thought planning and zoning was holding it up, and I haven't seen squat by holding anything up here.
I know, we just rubber stamp and send it out.
Well, we don't even
To the
rubber stamp
council.
it, but we give them our comments, and we give them our
Yeah.
point of views, and we give them our thoughts, but at the same time, you know, I've always wondered, why is it taking so long? Well, you as a developer have Joe Schmo as your engineer, and you haven't paid him yet, but you need to have plans drawn up. Okay, well, once you pay those plans, well, why do you IOU so much? Because I've got to correct these plans. Well, the town's a problem because they don't need all that information. Well, yeah, the town does. They got to blame somebody for something.
Is it possible that we require that you go to these 2-3 engineers who are familiar with our codes and everything else? Can we do that
Well,
recommendation?
the reason we only have 2 engineering firms right now is because it's difficult to bring a new engineering firm up to speed because they have to learn the code and how the town looks at the code and how to enforce it. So we have 2 primary people right now. And the second group is at the point now, I mean, they still miss little things, but they're just getting to the point where they're more on target. So that's part of it. Part of it is them understanding what they're, reviewing the plans for. So we've got 2 that are pretty strong right now. The other issue is like Village of College Park. I mean, they got held up with DelDOT for a year. But then what people do is they turn and look at the town and say, well, you held them up. We're like, no. Unfortunately, the state agencies
No,
are allowed to hold
that was
up
brought
if
up
they're busy.
also that there are other agencies like DENREC and DelDOT which have hold up a lot of stuff, but they look at it as if town is the one which is holding it, which is, we need to be able to somehow say, hey, these are the things which town is responsible for, and these are the things which your engineer is responsible for getting it done from the state.
Well, that's all in the town code also.
Yeah,
Maybe
unfortunately,
the
house-
thing is the council or somebody on the chamber needs to talk to the press and have the press here at every meeting and say, okay, well, they got preliminary approval, now what do they need to do? Well, their engineer needs to make sure they comply everything with the town code and fill out the application. And within 90 days, it can be approved, as long as their engineer can flip everything in 90 days. Their engineer is gonna look at you and say, there's no way I can flip it in 90 days. Well, it's not the town's fault. And it's not the town, I mean, I was on the outside, inside, I've seen it from both, and I'm telling you that I don't believe the town is holding things up, and we're not. So far, we've not done anything that's stupid in regards to saying, well, you need to come back so we can review this again, or you need to come back so we can review this again, on anything that's, frivolous
No,
stuff.
so far I've seen it, anything comes, we take action and we keep on moving up, but
Right.
But somehow, and I did talk, I mean, Jocelyn knows that we worked with an engineer who was from Millsboro, and and after finding out, he just threw his hand, I don't want to deal with Georgetown. And then when I came in, and Jamie and Jocelyn said that we explained it to him in detail, what needs to be done, and he will not complete, like what you said, if it's not completed properly, it doesn't get moved forward.
Doesn't move forward in Millville. If they don't meet the requirements, they don't go planning and zoning. We just pulled a subdivision off for final approval because they didn't have a letter from DelDOT saying that they were approved. But hey, you're not going to town council. You don't have everything, you're not going. Whose fault is it? Well, the town's not going to give us approval. Well, no, you didn't give us a letter that you should have had already. That's your fault. It's not the town's fault,
I will tell you that some of the things we've seen lately, there have been a lot of comments on certain projects because it's the same engineering firms trying to handle several projects, and they're just not taking the time on each individual project to make it right, and they're getting the same comments again because they're making silly mistakes. I mean, they're busy, they're making the money, but the problem is now the people that they're doing the work for, they're paying the money, and
Do
it's
you
for
flag
them
that-
to not focus.
Do you flag it to the owners and say, hey, look?
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
we
the
make
second-
sure, now we've started, we copy everything to the owner and the developer. So if you get comments, the owner knows that these comments came, these are highlighted red, these are duplicates. It means your engineer didn't fix it the first time. So we're trying to make sure they're informed and they know that that's where their money's going.
Okay. That's all we can do at this point.
That's a smart thing there.
And I've been on both sides of it too. There was a time of day where I think with Jocelyn, I see this is taking forever. I've gone back to engineer twice, but at the failure of my engineer. So the engineer firm that I did didn't do his job. Not necessarily at all Jocelyn and Jamie's fault. It's a process, yes, but I think it's education-wise. Either they're not taking the time to read the code, nor do they understand the comments, and they come back again, well, it's not right, so you gotta start all over again. And I've been on both sides of it, but again, with Erica sitting here, I don't see it. And it's always easy. It's no different than me building houses. if I've got an issue, my plumber makes a mistake, my plumber doesn't hit his schedule, nobody goes to my plumber with a complaint, my customer doesn't. My sign's out front, it's my problem. And I think, you know, everything, it rises to the top, and that's same scenario here, you know, just because it's presented in front of the town. And Ron and Sonny, I've heard the same stuff, and I've tried to be open-minded to it, but right now I don't see it. And this scenario here, Del Dot for 2 years, I'm sure the word on the street, and everybody's known about this project for 2 years, is that the town's never gonna get their rural farms up. I see it, you know.
I saw somewhere saying no to Royal Farm, yes to Wawa. Somewhere I saw that sticker.
I don't know, Wawa's one by my
I
house.
won't say that loudly, but I prefer Wawa. Sorry, I like their coffee.
Okay, all right.
But I think, do you guys keep track of,
Yeah, we don't have
do you
that.
keep track of time of application as far as when rural
Well,
farms,
I think you guys get copied on this
Yeah.
report that I try to keep up to date at least every week, that tells you when things come in and out, and you can see when people submit, when they get their comments, and how long it takes them to resubmit. Sometimes it's months before a project might resubmit, and they don't always tell us the reason why, and unfortunately, we don't always have the time to just follow up and say, hey, you know, I haven't heard from you this month, how come?
but I think
Where's
that's
your
a
plan?"
great practice, because it kind of, time flow answers everybody's questions. Say, okay, rural farms here, how long did it take for them to present their resubmittal from the time they met you to get back in front of us? Do you know, roughly?
Almost like
Well,
a year or so, I think.
they
No, not 2 years,
submitted-
from when they submitted for their extension.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Oh, they just turned that in. I mean, we worked with them so that we could turn it around right away for them.
Yeah, so
they knew
obviously-
they just gave it to us, and within a week, we were able to get it on the agenda and get it here.
So
we
obviously
don't-
the issue is not in the front office stuff, so.
No,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And I think also, the towns they have two different engineering firms. I mean, they've got to be cautious about conflict of interest. All the different engineering firms coming in here, well, A can't review A,
Right.
B can't review B, so they've got to be cautious to make sure that they don't have any conflict of interests in that regards. Or they've got to find an engineering firm that's willing to say, no, I will not take on any contracts within the municipality of Georgetown because we're their engineer. And that's difficult to do too, because then there's a lot of engineering firms out there who'd be throwing away a lot of money. So they got to play the conflict of interest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to any suggestion anybody has. We try our best. There are some things that we just don't have much say over, and there are some things that, yeah, there might be little things we could do. When we're really crazy and slammed, we're not babysitting as much as when we're slower, and then we can actually work with people more. We offer pre-developments, we offer initial one, and then a lot of them don't even have their engineers yet. We offer to meet again, spend the time with them again, re-go over everything that's required. We give them copies of the code, the process. We try to step them through everything.
And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it is in education, people just not knowing maybe the process, but in Jocelyn and Jamie's defense, in projects that I've had in the past, you don't even have to set up a pre-development meeting. It's a simple phone call saying, hey, what forms do I need to fill out for this project? What am I looking at? And generally, they're pretty open to do that for you without a official pre-development, just answering questions on the processes. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is on the processes and what's required, whether it's a subdivision or a submittal of a project. I think it's education on the people's end that, and maybe somewhere along the line, maybe it's a processes on the website that's on there a little more official as far as break it out and say subdivision process, here's A, B, C, D, and E of what you need. You know, A is gonna
that's a
be
good idea.
set up this preliminary.
Maybe for a smaller business or smaller project, like a small building
Correct.
a house, there should be a much simpler process.
Right, little checklists that they can actually
And
do
I,
too.
and I think that's more so of where, hey, the town's holding me up, maybe that smaller guy that necessarily doesn't want to go spend 10 grand on the engineer and says, oh, I could do this submittal myself.
and then
Well,
it
a
gets
lot of
involved.
times it's a little bit more of an undertaking, because I can tell you right now, I do this, I read here weekly, but if you say, hey, code XXXX, and I read it, I may still not fully understand it. I may have to rely on Jocelyn and Jamie to say, hey, decode this code for me, so I
And if we
understand what
don't
my next.
understand, we're in trouble, but.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's in education, and maybe something on the website where those guys could go and say, hey, you know, I want to do a subdivision of a lot. Okay, here's what you have to do. here's the fees that you're probably gonna be associated with that as far as if you go to engineer one
approximate
time, two
cost.
times,
Yeah.
you know, those costs depend on you. Maybe that's something we could.
Or maybe for a smaller project versus a larger project, something.
Well, I think what happens is, and something that we've seen a lot, is where people come in, they deal with the front counter. The person at the front counter doesn't necessarily know everything that's required because every project is different. So they turn in an application maybe with one piece, like maybe their fire marshal approval, but they don't turn in their Sussex County Building Code approval or Office of Drinking Water, or they may not have everything. Technically, we're working on a process so that we can start at the counter. We don't accept anything unless it's complete. And we'll give you a checklist. Here are the things that you need. We can't accept this until we have it. Because what happens now, we bring in the application and maybe one of those approvals, and we can't really do anything with it until we have everything. Because there's no sense in sending it to an engineer or being reviewed internally if it's something smaller, like for a tenant fit out or something. We can't officially do anything with it, so we notify them, okay, these are the things you need. So we're holding their application technically for them.
I think what you said
But
is.
they need all those things, and then they blame us, and it's like, well, wait a minute, we told you these pieces are missing. We can't do anything with it until you have everything turned in. So
I
it's
think-
gotta be complete.
I think what you said initially is probably the right way to go, is just have a checklist and do not accept anything, that unless you
Right.
come up with this complete application, we are not holding it. You have not submitted the project completely, which is complete according to us.
Exactly.
And this is the checklist we gave you in the beginning, at the pre-construction meeting. We told you that you need this before we can accept the application, and it's still not complete. So get this thing complete, and then we'll take the application.
Right.
Then
They
you can
can't
say,
blame us for
we
holding
got
it.
it at such and such date, and we turn it around in so many days. So
And you will, nevertheless, you will still have some people that,
Yeah.
because of
There
the
will
extent
be.
of what's needed, are going to have that issue with that. But it is the process, it's what needs to be done. But I think there's nothing wrong with listening and fielding the complaints and maybe come up with suggestions. I mean, again, I think education is the key to all of it, and help
Right.
on the people, help people
And
understand.
We're dealing with people, and we're dealing with people.
Different
who-
education levels.
Well,
and-
not even that. We're receiving we're receiving business licenses now in the municipality where I'm at. We send you a letter, we send you an application, we send you an invoice. Complete the application, sign, send us a check with the invoice. We get a check. Not a copy of the invoice, not an application, we get a check. So now we have to hold that check until we can contact the individual and say, you still owe us more information. They don't read, they don't
No,
want to
they
read.
don't. They don't want to.
They want somebody to babysit them, and everybody forgot that they're all grown-ups.
all right,
I know I'm being recorded.
we beat this horse.
No, but you're right, that happens every day. People don't want to read.
I
Yeah.
make a motion to adjourn.
Amen. Second?
Second?
Amen. So closed.
All right, have fun.
Yes, I will try.
Thank you.